First at 9 this Sunday, the 9th of February 2025. Monkey power! Sri Lanka plunged into darkness by failure at the Panadura grid substation, all thanks to a monkey tampering with the transmission system. The Ministry of Energy promises a full-scale investigation into the incident. Power move. President Anura Dissanayake jets off to the UAE tomorrow, scheduled to address the prestigious World Government Summit 2025 in Dubai. Smart growth. Sri Lanka's economy can only thrive through foreign direct investments and an export-driven strategy, stress experts. Further claim cutting wasteful expenditure could be key to solving the nation's economic crisis. Justice to the aggrieved. A cabinet subcommittee to be appointed to assess the victims affected by the Umayyah project, says the Minister of Plantation and Community Infrastructure.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lanka Kiren Perata. ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
කන්ට පරිස්සම් කරගත්තොත් අපි පරිස්සම්.
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasafe වැස්සත් මට්ටුවෙන් ගෙදරත් තිස්නේ.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I am Aditya Singha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world, brought to you by the only Sri Lanka media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now in your top story tonight, Sri Lanka's power grid experienced a cascading failure due to an incident at the Ceylon Electricity Board's Panadura grid substation, resulting in a nationwide outage today at around 11:50 a.m. However, according to the CEB, power was almost fully restored by around 5:30 p.m. today. According to the Minister of Power, the outage was caused by a monkey falling onto the power lines at the Panadura grid substation. The island-wide power outage occurred at around 11:15 a.m. today. Following the sudden power failure, an immediate investigation was conducted. Consequent to the probe, the Ministry of Power confirmed that the outage was due to a failure in the Panadura grid substation. Energy Minister Kumara Jayakody claims that the disruption was caused by a monkey coming into contact with the transmission system at the substation.
පානදුරේ අපේ ග්‍රිඩ් එකේ CB ග්‍රිඩ් එකේ ට්‍රාන්ස්ෆෝමර් එකට මේ වඳුරේ යටිලා තියෙනවා. ඒක නිසා වෙච්ච බ්‍රේක් ඩවුන් එක තමයි ලංකාවටම පැතිරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක මෙන්න මේ යථාර්ථයටපත් කරන්න ලංකා විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයේ ඉංජිනේරුවන් කටයුතු කරමින් පවතිනවා. However, a security officer deployed at the Panadura grid substation commented on the incident, stating that a loud blasting sound was heard at around 11 a.m., after which officials were informed. He also claims that no monkeys were seen in the area at the time of the incident and that such an event had never caused an island-wide power outage before. Today's incident marks the first nationwide power outage since the one that occurred on the 9th of December 2023. Meanwhile, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board reported that the power outage disrupted water distribution from pumping stations across the island. As a result, the board urged consumers to use water sparingly. Efforts to restore power began immediately. The Ceylon Electricity Board announced that power had almost completely been restored across the island by 5:30 p.m. today. CEB Chairman Dr. Tilak Siyamalapitiya stated that while minor disruptions remained in several secondary supply lines, restoration work was progressing rapidly. Additionally, Secretary to the Ministry of Energy Professor Udayanga Hemapala announced that a comprehensive investigation would be launched into the incident.
Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
චන්දරුසුනේ කාගෙන් මනාපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Responsibility to look after our health.
The best nutritional supplement for diabetic patients with no added sugar. Maliban Vitagen. Stay healthy for a good reason.
Now, in other utility-related developments, the Ministry of Urban Development, Construction and Housing announced that water tariffs will be revised in line with the recent decrease in electricity rates, with changes scheduled to take effect at the end of this month. Secretary to the Ministry Ranjit Ariyaratne said he received the proposal presented by the relevant committee of the National Water Supply and Drainage Board concerning the reduction of water tariffs. He added that the proposal has been forwarded to the Minister in charge of the subject. Accordingly, the revised rates will be announced once the approval from the Cabinet of Ministers was granted. The NWSDB stated that it is expected that to reduce water tariffs by between 10% and 30% in the revision. Now, in other local news, President Anukumara Dissanayake is scheduled to embark on an official state visit to the United Arab Emirates tomorrow at the invitation of the UAE's President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. During the official state visit, President Dissanayake will also attend and address the World Government Summit 2025 in Dubai. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism announced that President Anukumara Dissanayake is set to leave Sri Lanka tomorrow for his inaugural state visit to the United Arab Emirates. The visit will be the President's third official state visit abroad. According to the statement, the President's 4-day state visit to the United Arab Emirates will conclude on the 13th of February. President Anukumara Dissanayake is scheduled to meet the President of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, to hold bilateral discussions on a range of areas of mutual interest. The President is also scheduled to meet the Vice President and Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. The statement further reads that the President will address the World Government Summit 2025 in Dubai, where the President will hold bilateral meetings with heads of state and governments from several countries attending the summit. President Dissanayake will also engage with a number of CEOs of leading global companies in sectors such as IT, AI, energy, tourism, finance and media to attract investments to Sri Lanka. The official state visit is expected to strengthen the bilateral ties between Sri Lanka and the United Arab Emirates.
Fast track your career from O-levels with eSoft.
Diabetol, සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
Prime Group ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන land leasing ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසිගින්නක් නැහැ.
කිසිගින්නක් නැහැ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Chartered accountant Sujiva Mudaligi urges the government to implement the required reforms at the moment in order to create a sustainable model which will pave the way for a stable growth trajectory in the upcoming years. Joining our current affairs program at Hyde Park with Indivari Amuwatta, Mudaligi reaffirmed the importance of achieving economic growth for debt sustainability and asserted that the economy can only be expanded through foreign direct investments and an export-led economy. Meanwhile, economist Talal Rafi underscored that Sri Lanka needs to borrow funds due to high debt rollovers and stressed that taking on debt is not a fault of the previous or incumbent administrations.
Is Sri Lanka really taking this crisis as an opportunity to grow?
Over the last couple of months, we've currently experiencing this stability on the fiscal side. I think the important point is that we have a 3-year window until 2028 until we start repaying our debt. So if you don't do the reforms, if you don't do what is required for us to leapfrog from where we are right now, don't be too surprised if we get back to a crisis sometime down the road. We have a stable position right now, but do the hard reforms that is required going forward. We should not be talking about anything else other than how do we grow this economy, because if we don't grow the economy, we can't get out of this mess that we are currently in. We can't be relying on IMF forever. We can't be relying on India to help us and China to help us whenever we are in trouble. We need to have a sustainable model. So how do we get to a sustainable model is through reforms that are required so that we have a stable growth trajectory over the next few years. And when should we do this? In my view, the 3 best years, 2025, 26 and 27.
What really measures do you think we can implement going forward, especially when we talk about rising levels of debt and how to manage our public finance?
In January 2025 alone, we are still borrowing from the domestic market. Treasury bills worth over 700 billion rupees were issued. So that is a huge amount. So that is the amount we are borrowing on a monthly level for the government to sustain. And of course, this is not the fault of the present government or the previous government. This is the way Sri Lanka has been functioning. People need to understand the term gross financing needs. So that is the amount of financing Sri Lanka Lanka needs in a year to sustain itself. So that is interest plus the maturity plus the fiscal deficit. So that at the peak of the crisis in 2022, it was 34%. Right now it's come down to, according to the last IMF report, 25%, almost 24.9%. So that is 1/4 of Sri Lanka's economy has to be, financed each year for Sri Lanka to sustain.
So we have to seek outside financing or?
Yes. In 2028, that issue also comes in, but hopefully we can start borrowing. People say the government should not borrow, whether it's the present government or the previous government, that wasn't a choice. For example, if you stop borrowing, 25% of GDP you have to pay a year. That is not sustainable. Even if you double VAT to 36%, income tax to 72% or corporate tax to 60%, we still can't finance it without borrowing. So the truth is, that's the way forward because the rollover debt is too high. So the IMF by 27 to 32 wants to bring it down much lower. And how do we solve this? In my view, first thing is the fiscal deficit. We can't continue with expenditure being more than revenue.
But that has been Sri Lanka's issue throughout.
That is Sri Lanka's issue. I think one or two times, except that we have never balanced our fiscal budget and even primary budget. So when you take away interest, only about 6 or 7 times we have balanced it. The solution is, of course, something that's going to be extremely unpopular, bringing the deficit down or zero. But that will lead to either increasing revenue, which the people paying taxes, it's not fair on them, or expenditure. So that is reducing expenditure, which is not going to be popular with the people who are receiving it. So any government, not just this one, even future governments, is caught in this area. So the only way would be to grow the economy, to increase revenue, increase the base, and at the same time try to downsize wasteful expenditure, especially if we can get rid of some of the unproductive sectors.
How would you really analyze this situation and give us a forecast on how we manage these numbers? But in order to really solve this one crisis, how do we get to the root of it and address this with those calculations that you put forward?
Last year we had negative growth, right? But now for the last few quarters we've had positive growth. And Central Bank expects 2024 to end up anything close to about 5% growth. But we need to keep in mind that we started from a very low base. So 5% doesn't mean anything. At 4% growth, the farmer in Tamutage won't even feel it. So for you to feel the growth, these people need to feel it at the grassroots level. Why do we need growth? First one, our real incomes have to go up. Your salary has to go up, my salary has to go up. We need to create job opportunities. We need to make our debt sustainable. Without growth, we can't do this. And we need to have some reserves for any calamity down the road. So we need to build up for this. So we need growth because of that. So how do we grow? Is only through FDI and an export-led economy. I think the biggest mistake we've done over the years is thinking that we can sort our problem with tourism and remittances. Both of them are important. We've had this for the last so many years. Still these shocks that are coming in, right, which we are unable to solve it by ourselves. So we need something more than this, including these two.
Deputy Minister of Agriculture and Livestock Namal Karunaratne urges farmers to supply a substantial quantity of their paddy stocks to government warehouses. Speaking at a media briefing today, the Deputy Minister emphasised that paddy prices were determined using a cost-reflective method to benefit farmers.
For Nadu paddy, the production cost is 91 rupees per kilogram and it will be sold at 120 rupees. The production cost of red Nadu paddy is 76 rupees per kilogram. However, a kilogram of paddy can be sold at 117 and 70 cents, ensuring a solid 30% profit for farmers. Additionally, an extra 2 rupees and 30 cents have been included to cover farmers' transportation cost. This is how we calculate the overall cost of a kilogram of paddy. Meanwhile, red paddy farmers will earn even higher profits. Despite their production cost being 76 rupees per kilogram, they will sell a kilogram of paddy at 120 rupees, making a profit of 40 rupees per kilogram. This achievement is unprecedented. A similar situation applies to Samba and Kiri Samba paddy. However, certain politically motivated groups are demanding that a kilogram of paddy be sold at 140 rupees. If that were the case, at what price would a kilogram of rice be sold in the retail market? We have received various proposals from different stakeholders. Some have suggested that the government should mandate farmers to supply paddy to state warehouses. However, we have chosen not to implement such measures. Instead, we trust that farmers will voluntarily provide a substantial quantity of paddy stocks to the government.
Now, meanwhile, Minister of Plantation and Community Infrastructure Samantha Widyarathne says that a cabinet subcommittee is set to be appointed to look into those affected by the Umaoya project. The minister said that the Cabinet subcommittee will be tasked with making recommendations to the government and to present them to the Cabinet by the end of February. The decision was reached during a meeting held at the Ministry of Agriculture on the 7th of February under the direction of President Anura Dissanayake. The discussion focused on several aspects related to the Umayo project, including but not limited to the provision of relief to those who have not yet received compensation for land and property acquired for the Umayo project, supplying clean water to those who have lost access to it, and conducting a full investigation into fraud, corruption, irregularities and other illegal activities related to the entire Umayo project. Now, the compensation claimed by several former MPs continue to dominate political discourse in the island. Let's take a look at the latest thoughts shared in that regard.
Now they have to provide answers. Did all those claimants, including Keheliya Ramukwella, who claimed 90 million rupees as compensation, release the sums they received through their asset declarations? Keheliya Ramukwella should have declared that he owns a house worth over 90 million rupees in his asset declaration. Everyone on that list must be ready to face the committee to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption. They will be summoned. I only received compensation worth 1/5 of the damage caused. The remaining 4/5 of the damage was funded out of our own pockets. We never depended on anyone else to have our needs met. We are self-sufficient individuals. We are not afraid of any inquiry. What transpired on the 9th of May 2022 was state terrorism. The people of this country reciprocated in kind when state terrorism was imposed on them. Members of the NPP or the JVP were not behind the riots. That was a response by the general public. Compensation had to be paid because property was set on fire. The arsonists must also be identified. It is no secret that the arsonists were frontline members of the JVP. We are watching closely to see if the law will be enforced against those individuals who set property on fire. The public wonders today if the government valuation department was coerced into valuing compensation according to the demands of the former government and a few politicians in violation of specific guidelines. This house was valued at 800,000 rupees. The roller door alone is worth 300,000 rupees. There were 4 ACs inside worth 200 rupees each. All the doors and window fittings were made of teak. The compensation granted was not adequate. The very same people who destroyed the property were the ones who valued the damaged property. According to the applicable policies relating to disaster relief, if a house is completely destroyed by a natural calamity, compensation worth only 2.5 million rupees will be granted. If 2.5 million rupees were paid to 43 individuals, the total sum would add up to about 107 million rupees. So how did they spend an extra 1 billion rupees? An immediate probe must be launched into this matter. Everybody responsible for the destruction now claim that the compensation amounts were determined by the claimants themselves. The compensation was granted by the Office for Reparations. The Disaster Management Center provides compensation if the damage was caused by natural disasters. Was this disaster natural? Why was the Office for Reparations set up? It was set up to provide compensation to those who lost property during LTTE terror. The Office for Reparation grants compensation to the aggrieved even today. The valuation there is calculated based on the value of the property. They must learn what they do not know first.
Now, meanwhile, Sri Lanka Podujana Peremuna's national organizer and parliamentarian Nama Rajapaksa claims that the government is hypocritical in their approach to the MP's riots damage compensation controversy, since the government accepts the valuations by the Government Valuation Department only when it benefits the incumbent administration. Meanwhile, the General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Duminda Dissanayake, claims that an island-wide campaign has been launched with the LG polls in mind, while further claiming that his camp will provide relief to the public deceived by the present government.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Peremuna's national organizer and parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa visited Polonnaruwa today and invoked blessings at the Somawathiya temple.
People believed the lies spread by the incumbent government on the election stage and brought them to power. A lot of people wanted to experiment with the incumbent administration. However, today the government has caused them injustice. The government themselves proved the lies they spread on stage. They came to power by making promises which cannot be kept. When they are confronted by the impossibility of keeping their promises, they resort to political suppression in typical JVP fashion as their mode of governance. The Minister of Justice must first report to Parliament in that regard. The Parliament must be made privy on how many suspects have been arrested over Lasantha Wickrematunge's murder. The Minister must present a synopsis of the investigation to Parliament without prejudice to the ongoing investigation. The government must also immediately stop disrespecting the Attorney General, the Attorney General's Department and the Judiciary.
සිද්ධියක් ඇදලා අරගෙන මේ වෙනකොට ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇති කරලා දෙනවා. මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මොකද කියන්න පුළුවන්? මගේ සහ ක්‍රිෂ් අතර තියෙන රග සම්බන්ධයෙන් ගනුදෙනුවක්.
My connection to Krish is over rugby. The public will be able to see who really dealt with the Krish company when the matter is taken up in court.
පහුගිය අරගල සමයේ අපේ മന്ത്രിවරුන්ගේ ගිනි තිබු ගෙවල් සම්බන්ධව ලොකු ආందోලනාත්මක කතා කරන විශාල මුදලක් ගත්තා කියලා. පැහැදිලිවම ආණ්ඩුව දෙබෙදි පිළිවෙතක් අනුගමනය කරන්නේ.
The government's approach is hypocritical. When Mahinda Rajapaksa's residence is valued by the government valuation department, it is right. However, when the valuation department estimates the value of the property damaged by the incumbent administration, that is wrong.
ඇයි මේ ආණ්ඩුව ගොවියට බොරු කියලා ගොවියෝ දැන් කියනවා වී ගන්නෙ නැහැ කොහෙවත් ගන්නෙ නැහැ කිසිම තැනක මේ ලොකු ප්‍රශ්න ගොඩක් යන ඉවරයක් නැහැ.
ඔබතුමාගේ ප්‍රශ්නේ අහන්න ඕනෙම නෙවෙයි. මේ ආණ්ඩුව ඇත්ත කිව්වේ කොතනද කියලා.
That is not the question that needs to be asked. The question is if the government ever said the truth. The cabinet spokesperson lied about a court report received by the Speaker of the House. I will try my best to find an instance when the government spoke the truth. The public has given them a mandate to remain in power for 5 years. We do not possess an army to torch houses or murder parliamentarians in the street to gain power.
Meanwhile, with the local government elections around the corner, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party also launched a series of meetings covering all districts of the island.
සෑම ප්‍රාදේශ සභාවක් වෙනුවෙන්ම ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂය මුල් කරගත්ත
Nomination lists will be filed in every local government jurisdiction under the SLFP-led Podujana Eksat Peramuna. We have already begun our campaign across all districts island-wide with the election victory in mind. With the incumbent government failing to keep the promises they made, we intend to win the local government polls and provide relief to the deceived public.
අවශ්‍ය කරන සහනය ලබා දෙන්න අපි කටයුතු කරනවා.
Now, in some other political updates, leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa claims that the Sri Lankan school system must provide students the skills and impetus to set up a Silicon Valley in Sri Lanka. Speaking at an event in Colombo, the opposition leader revealed that the Sakwala and Husma aid programs will recommence once the local government election is over. Many people ask me if the Husma and Sakwala programs have stopped. Actually, they have not. If we provide aid these days, some will allege that we do so with the upcoming elections in mind. After the local government polls end, the Husma and Sakwala programs will recommence, uniting everyone, despite their party affiliations, to rejuvenate the country's education and health sectors. Our school system must provide the impetus required to set up a Silicon Valley in Sri Lanka. Our education system must create students equipped with the skills to become software engineers and IT professionals. Welcome back. Now, with the 2025 budget set to be tabled in Parliament in the coming week, economist Dr. Indrajit Aponsu states that the government must effectively manage multiple aspects, including the International Monetary Fund, foreign exchange levels and the country's exports. He added that while the country has gained growth momentum, a 5% economic growth rate is not sufficient for it to fully emerge from the crisis.
The budget is around the corner now. Challenging time to the new government because of a number of factors that are going to influence their budgetary strategy. One is in compliance with the IMF, has been there since the last year, and which are not being very popular. And the second is that the economy has to show not just the sustenance but economic growth. But 5% economic growth is not good enough. We really have to accelerate. Then the third point is that our foreign exchange issue. We are expecting something like 7.5 billion, 7 billion deficit. So that deficit has to be managed. But on the other side of it, the deficit is going to come under pressure because of the expectations on account of importations on some of the restricted things. Coming to the budgetary area is that it is the management of exports. How do we really drive exports and connect the exports to the growth drive?
Welcome back. Now in your business updates, the Coconut Cultivation Board announced plans to reorganize the Kapruka Fund Management Board as part of efforts to expand coconut cultivation across the country. Chairman of the Coconut Cultivation Board, Dr. Sunimal Jayakodi, stated that the first phase of this initiative will be launched in the Gampa district on the 17th of this month. He further mentioned that the reorganization process will be carried out alongside the Kapruka loan scheme to provide financial support to coconut growers. As part of its long-term cultivation strategy, the Coconut Cultivation Board has set a target of planting 2.5 million coconut plants this year. Speaking further in this regard, Dr. Jayakodi revealed that 1 million coconut plants will be cultivated in the Northern Coconut Triangle. Now in other business updates, according to the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority's weekly update, the country has welcomed 44,293 tourists between the 1st and the 5th of February. 9,100 tourists have arrived in Sri Lanka on the 1st of February, with the highest number of tourist arrivals being recorded on the 3rd of February, when 9,974 tourists touched down in the island. Indians have topped the list, with 5,823 Indian tourists visiting the island within the first 5 days of February, making up 13.1% of total arrivals within February so far. The Russian Federation trails closely behind and claims the second spot, with a record of 5,795 arrivals, also making up roughly 13.1% of total arrivals. A significant number of tourist arrivals were also reported from the United Kingdom, China, Germany and France. With the ambitious goal of attracting 3 million tourists this year, Sri Lanka has so far welcomed 297,054 tourists. That's all the news we have for you tonight. For further updates, stay in touch with Other Derana, the nation's most trusted news source. Thank you. Have a great night.